Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. The Philippine peso eased back to the 58 to the dollar level after trading at as weak as 59.26. Copper prices hit a record high as disruptions at large mines and a string of lower forecasts deepened fears of a supply shortage. And two men arrested on suspicion of stealing jewels from the Louvre Museum have partially admitted their involvement in the daylight heist, but the precious pieces remain missing. First, let's take a look at how global financial markets performed overnight. Wall Street turned cautious after the Federal Reserve just cut interest rates, but signaled there may be no follow-up move in December. Investors weighed the Fed's quarter-point cut and Chair Jerome Powell's guarded outlook on future easing. Stocks initially rose after the announcement lifted by the Fed's plan to restart limited Treasury purchases, but gains faded when Powell said further cuts were far from assured. Policymakers also warned that the ongoing U.S. government shutdown is limiting access to key economic data, making future decisions more uncertain. The move brings the benchmark rate to a range of 3.75 to 4%, the Fed's second cut this year.
Stocks, I think, priced in this thinking it was an absolute foregone conclusion. Even though Chair Powell says it's not a foregone conclusion, it still feels pretty likely to continue this, particularly if the labor market does continue to crack, which Chair Powell went out of his way a few times to point out that that was happening, and there was this inflationary pressure that was likely, perhaps a one-off increase in prices from tariffs, but there is some concern that those tariff one-offs are very quickly going to become permanent, and that mixed together will give stocks some room to really question this.
Wall Street ended mixed. The Dow Jones Industrial Average traded to the downside, lower by 0.2%. S&P 500 flat, and the Nasdaq higher by 0.6%. Over in Europe, markets were mixed as well. The UK's FTSE 100 higher by 0.6%. Germany's DAX up by 0.6%, and Germany's DAX lower by 0.6%, and France's CAC 40 lower by 0.2%. Here at home, the peso is trying to recover after plunging to its weakest level on record this week amid jitters over governance and growth. The local currency closed Wednesday at 58.69 against the U.S. dollar after hitting 59.13 the day before and trading as weak as 59.26 intraday. Economists say that the Banco Central is letting market forces determine the peso's value, even as it remains one of Asia's underperformers. BPI notes that manageable inflation could help stabilize the currency, while a weaker peso may even support exports and economic growth. Netherlands-based ING Bank, meanwhile, says investors are watching key U.S. economic data that could signal the dollar's next direction. The Philippines is ramping up its push for clean energy, and the Asian Development Bank is backing that transition with a $1 billion loan. The funding will help strengthen the country's power grid and support the development of new renewable energy projects, particularly offshore wind. The bank's senior energy director said that the program will finance transmission facilities needed to connect future wind farms to the grid. He explained that because the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines is a private operator, financing would have to be channeled through the Department of Energy. The ADB added that discussions may take time, but are crucial to ensuring upcoming wind projects can be linked to the grid. The DOE is also preparing for its fifth green energy auction, targeting 3,300 megawatts of offshore wind capacity between 2028 and 2030. The condo market is making a comeback, with demand for mid-income units expected to drive Metro Manila's residential recovery through 2027. Data from Collier's Philippines shows vacancy rates are seen at 26.5% this year, easing to 26% in 2026 and 24.9% by 2027. The Bay Area Port Bonifacio and Makati Central Business District are projected to record the highest vacancies over the next 2 years. As of the third quarter, about 30,400 units remain unsold. But developers are banking on stronger demand for mid-market condos priced between 2.5 million and 12 million pesos. Copper is shining brighter than ever, surging to a record high of $11,137 a ton as global supply worries intensify. Disruptions at major mines and lower output forecasts have driven the price rally. Analysts say Trump-era tariffs, aging mines, and production issues are fueling the spike, while hopes for a U.S.-China trade deal are adding momentum. London-listed Glencore reported a 17% drop in output, with other producers also warning of weaker production next year. The record caps a volatile year for copper as inventories shift to the U.S. and new traders pile into the market. For the Philippines, a major copper producer in Southeast Asia, the spike could boost mining exports and lift local stocks like Philex and Atlas. And with the peso still near record lows, stronger commodity prices could provide much-needed support for dollar inflows and trade revenues. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Welcome back. Let's check on how Asian markets are doing this Thursday morning. Right now, the Nikkei 225 is trading to the upside, higher by 0.3%, rather 0.1%, lower by 0.1%. Now, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index trading to the upside, up by 0.2%. Shanghai's Composite down by 0.3%, and Singapore's Straits Times Index lower by 0.2%. Here at home, the Philippine stock market extended its gains Wednesday as bargain hunters picked up cheaper stocks, while a stronger peso added to optimism. PSE Index rose 0.2% to close at 59.63, its second straight day in positive territory. Most sectors ended higher, led by mining and oil, industrial and financials. Turnover reached 6.5 billion pesos, with advancers outnumbering decliners. Analysts say traders are pricing in a possible rate cut from the U.S. a rate cut from the Federal Reserve, which took place overnight, and trading cues from the peso's rebound to the 58 peso to the dollar level. Investors remain cautious, however, as market confidence continues to be tempered by domestic growth concerns and by the ongoing impact of corruption controversies on sentiment. Taking a look at the main gauge right now, PSE Index is trading to the downside, down by 0.2% to 59.56. All shares index trading flat with a slight downward bias, down by less than 0.1% to 36.03. Taking a look at these sub-indices, all are in the red except for the industrial counter, which is bucking the market's downtrend, higher by just 0.2%, however. Total volume traded very thin at 39 million pesos, valued at 654 million pesos. Market breadth, however, is positive, with 60 advancers, 49 decliners, and 51 stocks unchanged. Taking a look at the currencies, the peso opens at 58.73 against the greenback, down from its previous close of 58.69. The Philippine economy is growing, but still missing its mark, with GDP expected at about 5.3% this year, below the government's targets. The peso remains under pressure, and investor sentiment is cautious. Yet even with sentiment soft, investors are eyeing new opportunities led by the planned Maynilad IPO, the biggest listing in 4 years. So how can investors find returns in a volatile market? And could this IPO be the spark that rebuilds confidence? Joining us now is Serge Zandueta, the portfolio manager of Cole Investment Management's Strategic Growth Fund. Hi, Serge. Thanks for being here with us.
Hi, Maiki. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
Yeah, good to have you. Serge, the PSCI has been struggling to stay above the 6,000 level amid weak growth and steady foreign outflows. This despite valuations, being very attractive at 9 times PE. There are very few takers. Why so, Serge?
Yeah. I think what's going on at the moment really is sentiment towards the Philippines is just really depressed at the moment, bordering apathetic already at this point. And as mentioned earlier, a lot of these corruption allegations that's going around is not helping. What is noticeable in terms of how the markets have panned out recently is our other neighboring countries have actually been going up already. So that tells you there's a regional risk on impulse that's going on that's powered by the Fed rate cuts, but the Philippines is unable to actually join the party. So that tells you something idiosyncratic or relating to us is going on. And if you look at what's new, at least over the past, let's see, over the past 3 months, I would say it's really these questions on governance that's putting a lid on how our market's performing.
Yeah. Okay. Drilling down into those 2 points that you mentioned, the comparison with the regional peers and the governance concerns. Let's talk about those regional comparisons and what they have to do with market depth. We're seeing markets like Vietnam and Thailand outpacing us with stronger trading activity surge. Vietnam trades over $1 billion a day. That's 10 times more than us. How much of this gap between ours and theirs is because of fundamentals, and how much of it is because of the governance concerns that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think there are actually several things that go into that. I think as of late, probably you could say the governance concerns are really playing in. In terms of fundamentals, the sad thing about the Philippines is that corporate earnings growth over the past first half and some early returns we're seeing as of the third quarter also are a bit below what analysts had expected coming into the year. But a portion of that also as to why our volumes and trading activity have lagged our regional peers over the years is also because of the number of listings. So I think earlier you were mentioning Maynilad. In general, if you look at the complexion of the Philippine market, when I joined and started investing, we had about 250 stocks that are listed in the main bourse that you could buy and sell. That number has roughly stayed the same over the past 10 to 12 years. Whereas if you look at countries like, as you mentioned, Thailand, Vietnam, easily these countries have more than 700 listed names and they're adding more and more by the year. So actually, we also need to have these new companies list so that there's additional, I guess maybe you could call it excitement or at least attention that market players could have.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's always the same names.
That's right. We've got one up ahead, the Maynilad IPO. IPO looks like it's going to be the last one for the year. How excited are you about this IPO, Zerge? It's expected to be the biggest in 4 years, but it's also draining liquidity from the broader market. What are your thoughts on this overall?
Yeah. With regards to Maynilad, I think, well, based on what we're hearing from clients, it's something that a lot of retail investors are actually quite enamored about. I think definitely what's attractive there is the prospective dividend yield. So in a market that we're seeing today wherein it's very tough, you would like to secure that those dividend payments as a form of income. So dividend yield for Maynilad could be anywhere between 5 to 7% on a yearly basis, depending on how much they pay out and the income that they make. We'll see. I think the challenge with Maynilad, as it's about to list, really is the liquidity drain. Given that it is a big IPO and we already have a market that doesn't have a lot of interest, so you could imagine players who would rather actively trade in the market instead of devoting those funds into trading and investing. You have to park it, some of it in Maynilad if you want the exposure there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Zerge, let me ask you about earnings. Earnings fell short of expectations in the first half of the year. Q3 earnings have been trickling in. Are you seeing that same sluggish momentum carry into third quarter earnings based on what's been released thus far?
Yeah. So far, I would say third quarter earnings are just ho hum. So nothing really exciting that's come out so far. So across the board, we're seeing so far mostly just around mid-single digit earnings growth, with a few exceptions like Meralco. But if we're just going to stay at that mid-single earnings growth type of trajectory, like especially even heading into next year, I think that's something that might not necessarily excite a lot of investors at this point.
Yeah, speaking of being ho-hum and not exciting a lot of investors, economists project GDP growth at just about 5.3% for this year. This slower growth, this weaker capital formation, the cuts in government spending due to the corruption fallout, that seemed to hit the demand for luxury purchases across retail and property, the retail and property sectors. Serge, can you connect the dots for us?
Yeah. Of course, it's really hard to pin it down exactly, right? But um, yeah, one immediate, like let's say, impact that we could probably make a theory in terms of how things could pan out because of all of the corruption fallout is, yeah, less spending on luxury goods, right? Given that there's going to be greater scrutiny all around. So yeah, as you just mentioned there earlier, so like, of course, we cannot verify this for sure, but maybe the market is thinking this way. Like, let's say, if you look at one of the
Yeah.
stocks actively traded, which is Ayala Land,
Yeah.
property stock, it's fallen by a lot. Naturally, when central banks cut interest rates, that's a period in time wherein you should see property names recover. Uh, yeah, but
Yeah.
maybe
Taking a
later.
look at Ali now, Zerge, it's
Yeah.
trading to the downside. It's at 2015, which is very close to its 52-week low of 2010. Weakness in Ayala. This is a leader in high-end residential. Is
Yeah.
this, do you think, because demand is going to be taking a hit because of all the spending cuts, given the corruption, corruption allegations all around?
Yeah, that's possibly how the market is looking at it. But given how much it's fallen and how cheap valuations are at the moment, I actually view this move in Ayala Land more as an opportunity for the long term. But definitely, in terms of the numbers, if they're really going to be impacted, we'll have to see. I think what's good in terms of what we're seeing with Ayala Land and a lot of the other major big caps that we have in the market is we're seeing a lot of corporate buybacks. So if there's really one big positive, I would say that we're seeing in the Philippine market is that the companies themselves, these big caps are actually buying back their shares. So
That's okay.
yeah.
That's good. They need to keep their prices up. Zerge at 59.45 right now, down by 0.3%. Are we close to finding a floor?
For the market, I would say we are probably nearing the floor, if it's not the floor just yet. That's another positive I could see, at least in terms of the Philippine market. Maybe you could argue it's not going up. But personally speaking, I think the downside might also already be capped, given that a lot of the sellers that have probably wanted to exit our market have already gone. Some of the things that we've been hearing recently is that long only funds, um, these big investors that came in the market, like let's say over the past decade, they've also been exiting already recently. So if you think about it, like a lot of the foreign investors have actually left the country. So that makes it for that makes an environment wherein I could say the market is probably light. You
Yeah.
just really need a solid catalyst for it to start going higher.
Yeah. Goes back to the last word that you, what you used earlier to describe the market as ho hum. No buyers, but also we need to point out that there haven't been much sellers. Okay,
Yeah.
Zerge Zandueta, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Now, as online betting spreads nationwide, the Philippine Charity Sweepstakes Office is moving to protect legitimate players and tighten regulations. The agency is stepping up its fight against illegal online lotteries while aligning its operations with global best practices from the world's leading lottery organizations. Aldo Barcelon has the details.
The PCSO hosted over 200 foreign delegates to the Asia-Pacific Lottery Conference in Parañaque City Wednesday. Among those discussed were how lottery businesses are adapting to the digital era. And while the PCSO says it's yet to fully digitize its lottery services, General Manager Mel Robles says the agency has implemented stricter checks and verification for its lotto outlets.
When in doubt, the tellers are trained to challenge the bettor to show proof. And I agree, anonymity is lost with online because you have to register as Robert said.
Allwyn Group CEO Robert Vatal also attended the conference as a representative of one of the biggest lottery and gambling companies in Europe. Vatal noted that one of the key factors that help the PCSO and lottery businesses is that the PCSO operates both as regulator and operator, and that it can take swift action to protect its customers.
If you do not have a license, anything is illegal, and you are prepared to enforce it. And the way how to enforce it is through three ways. One is advertising, the second one is IP blocking, and the third one is payment blocking.
Robles also doubled down on its responsible gaming campaign, urging Lotto fans to know when to stop.
We always make the point to announce that gaming is for fun. No? When does it become irresponsible gaming? And we tell people that when you deviate now from your normal life, it becomes destructive.
The PCSO also announced that for its 91st anniversary on October 30th, pot prizes for the Grand Lotto 655 and Ultra Lotto 658 will cap at 91 million pesos. Paolo Barcelon, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Shifting overseas, French police arrest two suspects in connection with the theft of France's crown jewels from the Louvre Museum, and both have admitted to taking part in that heist. Paris prosecutors say that the stolen jewels, worth more than $100 million, have not yet been recovered. Authorities also say there is no sign of inside help in the robbery. The two suspects are being investigated for organized theft and criminal conspiracy, while two others remain at large.
As I speak to you, both have partially admitted their involvement in the crime to investigators. They are currently being presented to investigating magistrates for indictment on charges of thefts committed by an organized gang, crimes punishable by up to 15 years in prison and a heavy fine. The charge of criminal conspiracy has also been retained, which carries a sentence of up to 10 years in prison.
And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maiki Oreta. Thank you for joining us, and keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.